Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Skully. Tonally, this doesn't really fit the whole spooked theme as it being taken place on a tropical island. However, you are controlling a skull, so I thought that this would still make an appropriate video game for this series. So I guess that'll just lead me right into the story. Basically, there are 4 elemental gods that reside on this island. There's the earth god, the water god, the fire god, and the wind god, and they are all siblings. However, these siblings do not get along and they haven't talked to each other in decades. Well, the earth god named Terry does not really like that. He'd rather all of these siblings get along, so he enchants some clay and inhabits it inside a skull. Hence, Skully is created. Now, Skully cannot talk, and basically the only things he can do are roll around, jump, and then he can cling to vines and roll up vines, but that's basically it. Aside from his special ability to create these clay bodies which give him different powers. Now there are 3 different clay bodies. One is super strong, one can move really fast, and then the other one can double jump. I don't really like these extra clay bodies, however. If I was just controlling Skully the whole time and you just created these 3D platforming courses specifically for me to roll around in, you know, like Super Monkey Ball style, or there is a game on the Wii where you kind of like have to tilt the Wiimote. I think it's called Marble Blast. Anyway, I really enjoy those types of games, and I just felt like if this game was entirely tailored towards Skully's mobility, I think I would have liked it a lot better. But I felt like maybe the developers of this game felt like they needed to flesh it out a little bit, and so whenever you approach these like mud clay special pits, these count as checkpoints, but this is also where you can create one of these 3 different mud bodies with varying different abilities. And then you do 3D platforming from there. The 3D platforming itself is not it's not like sandboxy like Mario 64. It's more channeled than that. Not as much as something like Crash Bandicoot, but you are essentially like going down these hallways, these pathways, and eventually going towards some end goal of some sort. I actually feel like some of the platforming itself was pretty challenging, especially when you are playing as Skully. I actually really enjoyed the challenging platforming aspect to this. Sometimes, like, this will vary from person to person. Sometimes I felt like it got to the edge of frustrating just because I would die at a specific part over and over again. Skully really doesn't like water and lava and all these elements, and if you do happen to go in them, you only get about 1 jump out of it if it's water. I think lava, you're just automatically dead, but you only get like 1 shot to get safely to land, or you have to revert back to your checkpoint. And some of these platforms are really small. If you are playing as one of these clay bodies, it's not as bad because you're not going to be rolling on any hills or slants or anything like that. But if you are a ball, obviously gravity's going to be taking force, and so you kind of have to fight against the angle of these slants in order to stay on top of the platform while you are working to jump up to the next platform. I could see someone who is newer to 3D platformers having a really tough time playing this game, especially if you are going for all the collectibles. So if you've ever played a game like Spyro, you know that these 3D platformers are typically littered with these coins or gems or whatever, what have you. In this game, they are flowers, and as you collect them, in the top corner it'll say how many of these flowers are in the game, and some of them are hidden, some of them are just to lead you right along the right path. As you accrue these flowers, you'll reach certain thresholds, and this just unlocks extra artwork. That's basically it. Kind of like when you're watching the bonus features of a DVD and they will show you some of like the early storyboards of a movie, this will unlock that. So not too much in terms of exciting unlocks, not too much incentive to get the flowers. However, I felt like it was fun just going for the flowers for flowers' sake. I don't think I even looked at the extras to see all the different art that I was unlocking, but it's just part of my lizard brain feeling like I just need to get every flower in sight. Now, if I did complete a chapter and somewhere down the line I I happened to miss some flowers, I didn't sweat it. I didn't go back and 100% complete it. Although this game is short enough that I potentially could go back to those previous chapters. It only took me the course of 2 days to beat this game, under at least 10 hours, like between 5 and 10 hours. I'm not sure exactly how long it was, but it is a shorter game, which I think is very fitting. I like the game length for a game like this. Anything longer, and I might have started to feel more burnt out. I definitely think it would be difficult getting 100% all the time during your first try, because there are certain chapters where you are being chased by something, the lava is rising, and you have to climb up as fast as possible. There's a couple chapters where the camera angle is flipped around towards you, so you can see what's looming behind you, like a giant tidal wave or something like that. Think similar going back to Crash Bandicoot. It liked to do that a lot in its earlier days, and you can't like really see where you're running, maybe just a couple steps ahead of you, but that's about it. Yeah, you really want to talk about challenging. Those levels, especially the one where the lava is rising, were really challenging. Some of those I just had to completely skip going for the out-of-the-way flowers, because I don't see any way that I could have possibly gotten them and cleared the whole level. It would definitely be a challenge for sure. There's not too much in terms of enemies. It's basically like these water blobs, and then they expand and burst with water, and it sprinkles all over the place and hurts Skully. You can go into your strong form and defeat these water enemies. And then there's a fire variant of these blobs as well. Basically the same shape, except they go big and then they explode and fire gets everywhere. I don't think there's any way to defeat these kind of guys. But that's pretty much it in terms of enemies. Like, there's tentacles that automatically will swipe at a timed basis, but there's no way to defeat those. Kind of a simpler game, especially if you look at these cut scenes between the chapters to develop the story. Rather than an animated cinematic, it's almost like they took their 3D assets and posed them, and then took a snapshot as the voice actors did their thing, and you were just looking at these pictures. You got the gist of what was going on, but I was just kind of confused. Like, surely it wouldn't have been that hard to just use the in-game assets and animate them in some sort of cutscene. I mean, I'm not an expert animator by any means, but even I feel like I could have thrown something together rather than just these still images. I thought that was kind of lame. The voice acting itself was actually pretty good, though. I really liked the voice acting, particularly our main protagonist, not Skully, but his creator, Terry. I really enjoyed his voice. He kind of has this cartoony voice. He kind of reminds me of that guy from Hotel Transylvania. Maybe not quite as goofy as Andy Samberg, but he still had that cartoonish voice. All of the other gods had great voice acting as well. And as you are progressing through these chapters, these gods will essentially interact with each other and banter and kind of trash talk. So you have something to listen to as you play. The story itself had some interesting beats. It did kind of play it a little safer in terms of the narrative, but I enjoyed it enough in order to pursue what would happen near the end. Like, I wanted to see how this whole thing wrapped up. Now, this all sounds well and good, but there are a lot of aspects that I wasn't too much of a fan of in this game, and one of my biggest complaints are platform manipulation. So these two forms, your speedy form and your form that can double jump, you can basically manipulate these platforms, and this game really likes you to have to do this in terms of like making you do puzzles, and I guess to kind of slow you down, but it will give you a set amount of these platforms, and these two forms can move around these platforms. Now, the speedy form can maneuver these platforms on the X scale, and the double jump form can manipulate these platforms on the Y scale, and you can have up to 3 of these clay bodies at once. So essentially, you as Skully are switching between these bodies and manipulating this platform in order for you to progress further into the game. And I just felt like this whole thing was very tedious and time consuming. It just felt like busy work, really, because you are constantly like having to switch between the bodies in order to move the platform where you want it to be. Eventually, in the later point of the game, they manipulate it so your bodies can move the platform just back and forth on 2 points while you as Skully are moving around doing something else. So I don't know, I just felt like none of the puzzles using this were creative at all, and it just slowed the game down to a halt. And that's really why I say, like, I'd rather just play as Skully, just craft some sort of fun course for me to roll around in, some obstacle challenges here, and I would have really enjoyed this game. But this game loved to have these platforms that you have to maneuver around with the forms, and I thought it was so boring. There are some nice tunes to listen to while you're moving around these platforms, but I don't think it's enough to hold my attention necessarily. And my other big complaint about this game is how it runs on the Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, all my casual reviews, I feel like, have this section, this special section called "How does it run on the Nintendo Switch?" And usually the answer is not very great, and this game is certainly no exception. It will drop down into the single-digit frame per second. It is very pixely. Objects not even that far in the distance get very blurry. It stutters, it hiccups. I mean, this is going to be another thing that varies from person to person depending on how tolerant you are of these types of things. But I thought it was playable. I was able to get through the whole game. However, it was extremely noticeable and distracting. So if you are sensitive to that kind of stuff, maybe look for this game on a next-gen platform. Overall, I like the initial concept of Skully. Being able to roll around as a skull in a 3D platforming field felt original to me, and the story itself felt charming enough that I was pretty engaged into what was happening to all of our main characters. But other than that, this game didn't really leave that much of an impression on me gameplay-wise. And just due to its performance, I think I'm gonna have to give this game a 2 out of 5. I was pretty hooked from the beginning, but my impressions of it just got lower as the game progressed. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think about Skully, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!